Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bullpen. I don't know why the brother came back. He had an opportunity to stay where he was at, but he came back. I have Joe Collins III, Republican candidate, running against Congresswoman Maxine Waters, affectionately known as Auntie Maxine. Joe, I appreciate you being on Indisputable.
Thank you for having me once again. I look forward to having another conversation with you after the last one. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was a good conversation, man. We appreciate you being here. Let's start with police reform. 94 to 96% of Americans are actually for police reform. Roughly 58% of Americans say police reform must be dramatic. Even 51% of Republicans say some police reform needs to happen. I'm not talking about criminal justice reform or some other type of justice reform, just police only. They're saying that there's something wrong with the police, right? What are your thoughts about police reform, and why is it that Republicans in your party have been so adversarial to police reform?
We'll start with the first part of that question. I think that we do need police reform. Being a 13-year U.S. Navy veteran, we did training on a regular basis, and it was a quarterly training. Every 4 months, when something new would come around, or we'd have some incident that the whole entire the U.S. Navy fleet and the military in itself would do training. I think that same concept needs to be brought across the police force. I think mental health right now in the United States is a really big issue. And our police are not trained on how to identify people with mental health issues. So I think that training needs to be implemented. Another thing I think that needs to be happening is we need to have police that are actually from the communities, policing those communities. A lot of times, especially here in Los Angeles, we have law enforcement that are from other states, that are from other cities, and they have no idea about the culture in the cities that they're policing in. And oftentimes they think everybody are criminals. And so those are a few aspects that I think should be changed, and a few things I think needs to be implemented. As far as the reason the party doesn't feel like police reform is normal, is needed, I can't speak for everybody, but I can say that a lot of people, they fail to step foot in urban America or even identify with the issues that goes on in urban America. I made a distinction between Congresswoman Young Kim, the way she was able to get the Asian hate bill passed, and the distinction between the legislators that we have that's supposed to represent the Black community. Now, a lot of people did not like the Asian hate bill. A lot of people thought it was unnecessary, but the fact of the matter is the Asian community thought it was necessary and they got that passed. Now, if it's going to do something or not is besides the point. The fact of the matter is they got that bill passed, and I think that same type of action and leadership needs to be brought across the entire legislative perspective.
Joe, I got to say, brother, you just talked a whole lot and didn't say much of anything. So okay. let me back, because you're doing the politician thing, okay? And here's the politician thing, and I don't want you to get caught up in that, because I think you are a decent individual, and I think you believe in change, even if we disagree on the methodology. You're in a position inside of the Republican Party to do a couple of things. One, to ask questions that other Republicans are unwilling to ask because they're afraid of Trumpites, they're afraid of QAnon. I don't know, man. They're scared of everybody inside of the party, okay? You have the ability to say, here's what the problem is with Mitch McConnell. Here's what the problem is with whatever Republican you want to call out. Now, let me give you some background on me. I don't give a damn who you are, Democrat, Republican, Independent. If the issue does not align with a community I love, you will have a problem with me. Now, you're a military guy. Mm-hmm. A military guy like yourself, you understand protocol. You understand also what happens when there's adversity that comes against your team. You're part of some teams already, Joe. You're part of the black team. You're part of the black male team. Now you're part of a team of individuals running to transform policy. At some point, you have to stand up to your own party and tell them the truth about themselves. The truth is, they have no business being adversarial to the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act. Would you not agree?
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing. You can't force anybody to have a perspective that they've never seen before. So if you ask me my opinion on why they fail to get police reform done, I can tell you, just like the last time, is because they fail to understand the perspective from people who live in our community. They don't identify with people who live in our community. Therefore, the issues that we feel exist, they don't feel exist. That's why I brought up the whole bill about young Kim getting the Asian hate pass. A lot of people didn't agree with it. A lot of people thought that Asian hate is not a big deal. The Asian community loved it, and they thought it was an issue, so they got that bill passed. I think the same thing needs to happen within our community, for our community. We have to pressure our politicians to get these bills passed.
Joe, come on, man. Now, you're saying the reason why your fellow Republicans are not for police reform, and the reason they stand against common sense legislation like the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act, is because they have not had the shared experiences. Wait a minute. A lot of these cats aren't multi-billionaires either, but they vote consistently to protect those billionaires. So explain that to me.
I can't explain that to you, but what I can say is in the Republican Party, we got a lot of black talking faces that think that they speak for the entire black community, and they have never shared the experience.
Well, who are they? Name some of them.
I can tell you, you have Brandon Tatum. He's one of the biggest persons who I go back and forth with all the time. You have Candace Owens. You have people like this who speak about the black community who have never shared that experience. And so these are the people who are driving narratives that says that, you know what, we don't have any issues in the black community. We need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and stuff. Well, how can you pull yourself up by your bootstrap if you have no shoes? You know, and so if you have never shared that experience, then you cannot speak on that experience. And that's one of the biggest problems that I have within my party today.
That's the disconnect.
I'm about police reform.
Joe, that's the disconnect. They don't need to have the shared experience in order to create or support policy that helps the community or helps this nation. They don't have to know what it's like to be poor in order to help poor people. They don't have to know what it's like to be black in order to help black people. They don't have to know what it's like to be a woman in order to support legislation that helps women. Brother, you can't say that in order for politicians to actually do right and create good policy, and policy is a contract between the community and the government, you can't say they must have a shared experience, because if that's the case, every politician who has not experienced whatever they're voting on would not be justified in that vote. You can't say that's the way they should govern.
Well, when you have politicians that's 20, 30, 40 years disconnected from the community, that's the issues that we have right now. That's the reason why we can't get anything passed. People think that there isn't a problem because they don't see a problem. They have never experienced a problem. So until they experience a problem, they will always keep that same mindset.
Yeah,
so unfortunately, in the time that we have, you're gonna have that shared experience.
Joe, the reason why we can't get anything done in the Senate is because of dumbass Republicans who are anti stuff that you support. And you're going to have to be part of that new voice that says you guys are the ones being unreasonable. You just told me on my show, you support legislation that was created by a Democrat, co-sponsored by Democrats, supported by Democrats, and universally opposed by Republicans. Now, I looked at your Twitter feed, Joe. Mm-hmm. On your Twitter feed, you're going after Vice President Kamala Harris. You tweeted trying to get the WHO to investigate China is like trying to get Kamala Harris to go to the US-Mexico border. It's not going to happen. Taking a jab at her Lester Holt interview. And I do agree, the way she answered the question was just horrible. But once again, proximity does not equal policy, okay? If you're able to sit on Twitter, and I got a bunch of them, man, don't make me read them all. If you're able to sit on Twitter all day, and you can talk about every Democrat, you can talk about every policy, every Democratic policy, but you say nothing about some of these individuals in that party, not only hijacking the message that you say they're hijacking, but being adversarial to the progress of the community that you support. Why don't you call them out the same way you call out Democrats?
I'm the type of person that is looking forward to working together on a bipartisanship level, whether they do or whether they don't. And that's my position. So when I look at different bills, one of the biggest issues that I have is that we have politicians that don't work together. For me, I'm about getting younger politicians in office. That's why we've been traveling across the country with Angela Stetton King, with Maj Toure, with Rizza Islam, actively engaging people in the inner cities to get actively involved in politics, because we need a change, whether it's Republican or Democrats. We have politicians that sit in there too long. It seems like everybody right now is fighting for the superior opinion that means absolutely nothing. So we have to start getting people in office that are willing to work together, that want to work together, that want to improve the quality of life for people who live in our communities, regardless if they agree with the opinions or not.
Okay. So I'm with you on that. I'm glad you all are going to urban communities. I'm glad you are trying to make sure more individuals in those communities are politically involved.